Every day inside these buildings, public servants make policy that affects the lives of every Victorian. Today, the veil was lifted on a culture of fear and secrecy.
The fear factor was certainly disturbing. The culture of fear manifested itself in many different ways.
The Victorian government made public a 280-page report into allegations that Labor operatives had been installed into senior levels of the public service. Deborah Glass says she didn't find evidence of wide-scale stacking, but what she did find was that other pervasive forms of politicisation were eroding the impartiality of the public service.
Creeping politicisation is a reality in Victoria and requires urgent attention.
The investigation took 2 years and the Ombudsman interviewed 45 highly placed public officials, including former and current department senior bureaucrats. According to one former secretary, frank and fearless was once the default position. It is now rarely part of the process in Victoria. Another said, that's where the problem partly lies, is that public servants are more inclined to think about the political implications or the government implications of things that might be occurring. So you interviewed a lot of current and former public servants.
Yes.
Why were they so concerned about being identified?
Well, many people told us it was fear of reprisal. You know, that if it was known that they had assisted the Ombudsman's investigation, their concern was that their livelihoods would be in jeopardy. Now, whether there is any legitimacy to that is not for me to say, but the fear is very real.
The Ombudsman reviewed millions of emails and records across more than a dozen agencies. But despite this, she says her investigation is incomplete.
There are 3 reasons. One of them is fear. Another was poor record keeping. There were questions that we were simply unable to answer because the records don't exist. And the third is cabinet secrecy. I mean, the Ombudsman is unable to even ask questions about ministerial deliberations or what goes on in cabinet.
So what does a culture of fear and secrecy mean for decision-making and other workings of government?
Well, it manifests in a number of ways. One of the ways is in an over-responsiveness to the preferences of ministers. And we've seen that not only in Victoria, but in fact around Australia. Most recently in the Robo-Debt Royal Commission, where ministers were basically given the advice they wanted to hear. There are many examples of that.
What does your report overall say about the consequences for public servants who do give advice to the government that it may not like?
Well, we have seen examples of public servants being terminated, and certainly there are many who fear losing their positions or losing government contracts if they give advice that the government doesn't want to hear. A politically impartial public service provides a really important check on the power of elected government. I mean, at the end of the day, they will also do what the government tells them to do, but they will do so having provided the government with, and this is a widely expressed, frank and fearless advice. So that advice, may well be, you can't afford to do that, government. You can't afford to do that because it's going to cost you this much and it's going to have these consequences, and it means that if you do this, you will not be able to do that. Now, that is the kind of advice we would want our politicians to receive.
Deborah Glass cited the estimated $200 billion Suburban Rail Loop as a prime example of secrecy and sidelining of the bureaucracy. At the time, Richard Bolt was the head of the Department of Transport, but despite his extensive public service experience, he was kept in the dark as the project was cobbled together by a small group of Labor stalwarts and PwC consultants. What did Richard Bolt tell you?
I'd rather quote his evidence. The extraordinary secrecy applied to this project was not only a breach of convention and public trust, it also comes at a high cost to public value, and specifically the best optimal use of state finances. So I think we can draw from that the pretty powerful observation whether its cost is the best use of public funds.
The report mostly covers the second and third terms of former Premier Daniel Andrews, but the Ombudsman insists this report isn't about him directly.
This report is not about Daniel Andrews. I mean, dare I say it is bigger than Daniel Andrews?
But the former Premier's private office didn't escape scrutiny. Its advisors are considered by some to be even more powerful than the government and the public service. One former department secretary told the Ombudsman the PPO kind of runs the show. We don't know how many people work there now, but Deborah Glass revealed that last year, under Daniel Andrews, it employed 84 staff.
The Premier's private office was roughly the same size as the Prime Minister's and New South Wales Premier's offices combined.
The Ombudsman said that the number of staff in the PPO is more than the New South Wales Premier and the Prime Minister has combined.
Well, I'm not accepting that proposition, but I will say this, that each government, every government, finds what it sees as its best operating mode.
Victoria's Treasurer Tim Pallas says he's never seen any evidence of the politicisation of the public service.
This suggestion that there is a culture of fear, it could not be further from the truth. All I can tell you is what my personal experience is.
It's not about your personal experience, though, Minister. This is about the experience of public servants.
What I would say is that the government has respected the processes of appointment.
Today, Premier Jacinta Allen was meeting with other state premiers in Canberra. She rejected the findings of the Ombudsman's report.
The shade that's being thrown on a very, very good and strong public sector that we have in Victoria is not just deeply unfair, it's not founded in any evidence that's presented in the Ombudsman's report released today.
The Ombudsman recommended drastic measures to address the concerns in the report, including appointing an independent public service chief to appoint senior bureaucrats.
I think a government ignores reports like this at its peril. There are real issues here that need to be addressed, and it will have consequences on the public purse because the kind of checks and balances that we expect the public service to provide will not be there.